On the day I married the most feared woman in the underworld, words suddenly appeared before my eyes. Marry her and you're dead. She's actually in love with your stepfather. This whole thing is a trap to make him swoop in and steal the bride. Run now while you still can. Otherwise, she'll auction off your virginity tonight in front of everyone, and let her rich girlfriends have their turn with you. 3 days from now, after she's had you beaten within an inch of your life, she'll tell everyone you died of a sudden illness and dump your body in the outskirts for the wolves. Last time around, I bolted the moment I saw those messages. That was a mistake. I got grabbed by Yvette Sinclair's enemies and brutalized. Meanwhile, my stepfather took my place in the wedding car and became the crime boss's pampered husband. After narrowly escaping death and finally making it home, he was already standing in the doorway with tears in his eyes. I know you hate me, he said, but why did you knock me out and throw me into another woman's bed? My mother didn't even let me explain. She said I had humiliated the family, and she threw me out without a second thought. Told everyone she'd never had a son like me. My sister, the one who had always doted on me, stood there and watched me burn alive. Then she locked the door and walked away. It wasn't until after I died that I found out the truth. My stepfather had written those messages himself. Then I opened my eyes again, and I was back to the day of the wedding. The same words were already floating in front of me. I watched my stepfather fuss over my tie with a warm, satisfied look on his face. I grabbed the kettle and poured boiling water all over him. This time, I was going to give him a taste of his own medicine. The boiling water hit Frederick Parker's arm, turning his pale skin an angry red. He stumbled back with a sharp grunt, and that warm, fake smile he'd been wearing all morning finally cracked. He glared at me with pure hatred. Jonathan Smith, have you lost your mind? He yanked off his jacket without thinking, and a white wedding suit was underneath. He'd put it on before he even came to find me. He'd helped me send every groomsman away, cleared the whole path, and all of it was so he could get into the wedding car the second I ran. Last life, I'd been too blind to see it. I actually thought he was here to wish me well. I looked at him and sneered. Sorry about that. My hand slipped. But since today is my wedding day, I have to ask, what exactly are you doing in a wedding suit, my dear stepfather? Were you planning to step in and swoop up the bride while I wasn't looking? His face went stiff. The messages were already rolling across my vision. Your stepfather knows he never had a real chance with Yvette Sinclair. He just put on the suit to pretend, even if it's only in his head. Don't go reading into it. Seriously, shouldn't you be focused on getting out of here right now? I ignored them and took another step toward Frederick. He couldn't meet my eyes. He looked exactly like a man who'd just been caught. Why, you're talking nonsense. Why would you believe those rumors? He was squirming, and I was just about to mock him again when the door swung open. My sister, Elaine Smith, rushed in. Jonathan, what are you still doing in here? The convoy is already downstairs. Frederick's fingers tightened around the hem of his jacket. I glanced at him calmly and deliberately asked, You don't look so good, Dad. Don't tell me you're not happy about me getting married today. He pressed his lips together and forced a smile. Of course I am. I couldn't be happier. I grabbed my jacket and walked out without another word. Right as I stepped through the door, the messages appeared again. You're really going through with this? She's a mob boss. She kills people without blinking. Now's your chance. Make a run for the stairwell. Hide in one of the trash carts, and let them wheel you right out of the building. This is it, last chance. I smirked and walked straight to the elevator in the opposite direction. I sent an emergency text to the police while I was still in the elevator. Then I walked out of the hotel with Elaine at my side. I looked up, and my stomach dropped. The cars parked out front weren't my family's wedding convoy. They belong to Yvette's enemies. They think you're Yvette's true love, so they're here to grab you and make her pay. What are you waiting for? Get back inside. I saw exactly what the messages were trying to do. These people had come prepared. They'd already taken control of the real wedding cars. If I ran back into the hotel, I'd be walking straight into a trap. That was how I'd end up dead for real. Hey, I just remembered I left the engagement ring upstairs. Can you go grab it for me? Elaine studied my face for a moment, then nodded. Sure. Stay right here. I watched her disappear through the hotel doors. Then I ran straight for the police station across the street. I didn't make it far. A hand clamped down hard on my shoulder, and Elaine's face appeared in front of me, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Jonathan, the wedding cars are around back. You're going the wrong way. She grabbed my arm and started pulling me back without another word. My blood went cold. Elaine, the sister who'd spoiled me my whole life, was working with Frederick. I lowered my head and bit down on her hand. The moment her grip loosened, I spun around and bolted, only to slam straight into a man's solid chest. The scarred man's grin was disgusting. His thick fingers wrapped around my throat and squeezed. Mr. Smith, my lady paid $10 million for you. Where do you think you're going? The memories of being humiliated and abused by that sleazy rich woman and her thugs in my previous life resurfaced in my mind. My body started to shake. I watched Elaine take the check the man handed her and walk away without looking back once. The messages exploded across my vision. You should have listened and run when you had the chance. At least getting auctioned off by Yvette would have been better than this. You're done for. These people have a blood feud with Yvette. Honestly, you'd be better off ending it yourself than waiting for what comes next. My chest was heaving, but I forced myself to hold the scarred man's gaze. I'll pay you twice whatever she paid. Let me go, and I'll tell you exactly what Yvette's weakness is. He blinked just for a second. Then his smile stretched wider. He ran his thumb along my jaw. Yvette's man is scared of a little pain. That's almost funny. He waved his hand, and 2 bodyguards stepped up from behind and pinned my arms. My lady gave one order today. It doesn't matter who shows up to stop us. We're taking your virginity tonight, and making Yvette choke on the humiliation. I fought back, but struggling against men that size was pointless. He laughed and dragged me toward the car like I weighed nothing. At that moment, the wail of police sirens grew closer and closer, and hope surged in my heart. But before I could call for help, I was knocked unconscious. When I woke again, I was lying on a soft hotel bed. Beside the bed, a strange scented candle was burning, making my whole body burn with an unsettling heat. I'd barely sat up when the door opened, and a woman in a bathrobe walked in. Just accept it, man. There's no way out now. Might as well relax and enjoy it. By the way, do we have to pay to watch what's about to happen? I took a slow breath. Then, following the lead the messages had given me, I reached out and started undoing her robe myself. Seeing my resigned expression, the old woman burst into laughter, the fats on her body shaking. I'm going to enjoy every second of Yvette's husband. The words had barely left her mouth when I moved. I pulled the fruit knife I'd hidden earlier from behind my back and drove it into her stomach. She screamed and grabbed a fistful of my hair, then slammed my head against the wall. You monster! You want to die that badly? I bit down on the tip of my tongue. The sharp taste of blood cut through the fog in my head just enough. I jammed my fingers straight at her eyes with everything I had. She stumbled back, and I ran for the door. Get him! Somebody get in here and beat him to death if you have to. The woman's furious screams echoed behind me, and my consciousness began to fade. I hadn't even managed to take 2 steps before I collapsed into a soft, fragrant embrace. At the same time, a few gunshots rang out behind me. In the blink of an eye, all the people chasing me had already been taken out. I forced my eyes open and tried to make out the woman holding me, but the heat crawling through my body kept dragging my mind under. All I could do was fist my hand in her collar and rasp out the only words I had left. Help me, please. When I came back to myself, I was home. My mother's palm cracked across my face before I could say a word. She slapped the table hard, again and again. You worthless boy. You let someone steal you away on your own wedding day. You could have at least had the decency to die out there. Instead, you crawl back here and expect me to look the Sinclair family in the eye? You've destroyed every shred of dignity this family had. Frederick rubbed my mother's back and shook his head at me with a look of quiet disappointment. Jonathan, if you didn't want to marry Yvette, you should have said so from the beginning. How could you let someone just take you like that? Now the whole city's talking about us. We're a joke. Elaine stood off to the side and said nothing. She knew exactly what had happened, and she just stood there like it had nothing to do with her. I pulled in a slow breath and kept my voice steady. I didn't do anything. I was set up. Set up. My mother hurled a cup at my head. Look at yourself. Look at what's all over your neck and chest. And you want to stand there and tell me you were set up? I looked down. Red marks trailed from my collar all the way down to my chest, which made it impossible to pretend nothing had happened. It wasn't a dream. My mind went blank. The messages were already racing past. The more you explain right now, the worse it looks. Just point the finger at Frederick. Tell them this whole thing was his plan. You saw Elaine take that check, didn't you? Say it. Tell them she's been sleeping with Frederick behind everyone's backs. Tell them they're working together to take the family's money, and they framed you to get you out of the way. My eyes went wide, because those were exactly the words I'd said last time. I'd come home broken and furious, and I'd said all of it. I had hated them to the bone, but those words had utterly enraged Elaine. She locked me away in solitary confinement and later burned me alive. My nails dug into my palms as I glared at them. Frederick sighed and stepped forward, reaching down to help me up. Jonathan, I understand you're upset, but we're family. If you just tell us the truth, we can figure out how to help you. Tell you the truth about what? I shoved his hand away. About how you married my mother while chasing after Yvette behind her back. Or about how I almost got killed taking the fall for you. Enough. My mother kicked me hard in the shoulder. You can't control yourself, and now you're pointing fingers at your own stepfather? You're disgusting. Frederick pressed a hand to his chest and let out a long, wounded sigh. I know Jonathan has never liked me, but if he's going to destroy my reputation like this, I don't see the point in going on. That was all my mother needed to hear. She completely lost it. Bring me my whip. The Smith family had a punishment tradition, 99 lashes. My father had once been beaten to death under that same rule. And now my mother was ready to use it on me, all for a man she'd picked up from a nightclub. My heart sank completely. When I looked at my mother, all I felt was disappointment. Elaine walked over and placed the barbed whip in my mother's hand without a word. I forced myself off the floor through the pain. If you won't believe me, pull the hotel security footage. See who deliberately sent the groomsmen away before I walked out. Go check whose account received a large deposit today. And then tell me whether I was set up. Elaine threw her phone down in front of me. I was trying to spare you some dignity, but you keep pushing. Fine. Open your eyes and take a good look. That's the security footage from the hotel room. Go ahead and tell me the person in that video isn't you. The video played. The sounds that came out of that phone filled the whole room. And the man pinned beneath the woman, face slack with pleasure, was me. No. That video is fake. I screamed it and hurled the phone at the wall. The sound stopped. Elaine let out a short, cold laugh. The hotel staff said you used 3 condoms. We have physical evidence and witnesses. You still want to keep lying? My mother brought the whip down across my shoulder. You shameless, disgusting boy. I won't stop until you're dead. That's a promise. The messages dropped all pretense as Frederick's real thoughts were right there on the screen. Idiot. You should have died a long time ago. If you'd just run as I told you to, none of this would have happened. You never had a chance against me. The whip had been soaked in salt water, and every lash felt like fire. I bit through my tongue trying not to make a sound, and the taste of blood spread thick and metallic across my mouth. I was on my hands and knees, and my shirt was soaked through with blood. The room was full of people, and not one of them said a word in my defense. The only sound was the whip hitting my back. But no matter how hard I tried, I still couldn't remember who that woman was. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Frederick's triumphant smile. I hated it. I hated the fact that even after being reborn, I was still going to die at his hands. I couldn't accept it. But it was already too late. My mother raised her whip high. Just as it was about to strike my face, a gunshot rang out from the doorway. Who gave you the right to lay a hand on my man? The plaster of the ceiling rained down in a fine, white dust as the echo of the gunshot died in the high corners of the room. My mother's hand froze in midair, the salt-soaked barbed whip suspended like a dead snake above my face. The sheer force of the sound made Frederick jump backward, his burned arm knocking against the mahogany sideboard, his face draining of color so rapidly he looked like a plaster statue under the bright chandeliers. Who? My mother gasped, her voice high and trembling as she spun toward the doorway. Standing in the frame, flanked by 4 tall, broad-shouldered men in dark gray, tailored wool coats, was Yvette Sinclair. She wasn't wearing her white wedding gown. She wore a simple, elegant black silk pantsuit, a long charcoal coat draped over her shoulders. In her right hand, she held a sleek, customized black automatic pistol, the barrel still smoking slightly. Her face was calm, beautiful, and completely devoid of human warmth, the very picture of the woman who ruled the East Coast shipping lanes and the city's private docks. Yvette. Frederick whispered, his knees trembling so violently his trousers shook. Mrs. Sinclair. This is a private family matter. Jonathan, he ran away from the wedding. He humiliated you. I don't recall giving you permission to speak, Frederick, Yvette said, her voice quiet but carrying a level, dangerous resonance that made everyone in the room instinctively hold their breath. She walked forward. Her leather boots clicked sharply against the hardwood, each step slow, measured, and agonizingly quiet. She stopped beside where I lay on the floor, her eyes scanning my torn, bloody shirt and the dark red stripes running across my shoulders. She crouched down. She didn't flinch at the smell of my blood or the salt water. She reached out, her fingers warm and surprisingly gentle as she touched my chin, tilting my face up to meet hers. You look terrible, Jonathan, she murmured, a faint, dry smile touching her lips. I leave you alone for 2 hours, and you let a couple of domestic parasites turn you into a scratching post. I didn't run, Yvette. I rasped, my throat raw from the salt water, my breath shallow. The wedding cars, they were fake. Elaine, she sold me to the Russo family. Yvette's green eyes went completely cold. She stood up, her hand sliding into her pocket. She looked at my sister, Elaine, who was currently trying to slide toward the rear exit of the parlor. Elaine Smith, Yvette said. The $10 million you received from the Russo family's offshore account was flagged by my treasury team 40 minutes ago. Did you really think you could use my husband to pay off your gambling debts in the Northern District? Elaine froze halfway across the room. Her face was waxy, sweat slicked her fingers clenching her skirt until the fabric tore. Mrs. Sinclair, please. It was a misunderstanding. We thought Jonathan was trying to escape. The video you showed my mother, I said, my voice rising through the pain as I pushed myself up to my knees, using the edge of the sofa for support. The Deepfake. Who made it, Elaine? It was. Elaine looked at Frederick, her eyes wide with a sudden, genuine terror. But Frederick was already moving. He dropped to his knees, his hands clutching my mother's skirt, his voice sobbing hysterically. Elena, help me. The Sinclair family, they're going to kill us. Tell them I didn't do anything. I'm your husband. My mother looked at Frederick, then at Yvette's smoking gun, and finally at me, at the raw, bleeding flesh on my back that she had carved open with her own hand. A sudden, horrifying realization seemed to dawn on her. The whip slipped from her fingers, clattering against the blood-stained floor. Arthur, she whispered, her lips moving without a sound. My baby, what have I done? You didn't do anything, Elena, I said, my voice quiet, completely empty of the anger I had carried through 2 lifetimes. You just did what you always do. You believed the nightclub dancer you married over your own blood. My mother looked at me, her eyes filling with a sudden, devastating grief. Jonathan, I thought the video was real. The hotel staff said. The hotel staff was paid $50,000 by Frederick's sister's network. Yvette said, her voice flat and final. She signaled her assistant, a sharp-faced man named Marcus, who stood waiting near the door. Marcus, Yvette said. The municipal tax department. I want the Smith family's retail licenses audited before Friday. All their commercial properties are leased through our subsidiary. The eviction notices are to be served by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. No, my mother screamed, running toward Yvette, her hands raised in desperate plea. Mrs. Sinclair. The Smith Group. It's my family's legacy. You can't just take it. The Smith Group survived for 10 years because my family's estate held 70% of your cargo bonds, Mrs. Smith, Yvette said, her eyes narrowing. I married Jonathan because I wanted a partner, not because I needed your petty retail shops. But you let your nightclub dancer use your whip on my man. She looked down at the bleeding stripes on my back, her eyes dark with a quiet, burning fury. By Friday morning, the Smith Group will be bankrupt. Your properties will be seized to pay for the medical damages he sustained today. And as for Frederick, she pointed her gun directly at Frederick's head. Wait, I called out, reaching out to catch Yvette's sleeve. Don't kill him. Yet, Yvette, I want him to tell me about the messages. Yvette paused, her green eyes looking down at me, then slowly lowered her gun. The messages? The words, I said, my hand shaking as I pointed at my own eyes. The system. He's the one who's been writing them. Frederick sat on the floor, his cuffed hands clutching his knees, his face waxy and pale under the bright chandeliers. The arrogant, triumphant smile he had worn only 10 minutes ago had completely vanished, leaving behind nothing but the dry, cold terror of a cornered rat. How did you do it, Frederick? I asked, sitting on the sofa, a warm towel Yvette's assistant had provided pressed against my bleeding back. The words before my eyes. The warning messages. How did you make me see them? I don't know what you're talking about, Frederick stammered, his eyes shifting as he tried to look toward the door. Mr. Simmons, Marcus said, stepping forward with a thick black case. He opened it, revealing a sleek, customized medical kit containing several thin silver probes and a small digital tablet. We found the optogenetic transmitter in your sister's medical clinic, the one she uses for private neural research. He looked at me, his face grave. 3 years ago, Mr. Smith, you had an eye exam at the Northern District Clinic. After a minor car accident. The doctor who handled the procedure was Frederick's sister, Dr. Clara Parker. She implanted a micro-AR lens, a prototype Neuralink chip, directly behind your left iris. It's a receiver, Mr. Smith. It projects digital text directly onto your retina, controlled through an encrypted application on Frederick's phone. The silence that followed was absolute. My breath caught in my throat. The system, I had believed was my saving grace, the supernatural power that had returned me to my wedding day, was nothing but a high-tech leash. Frederick had used the lens to guide my steps like a dog. When he wanted me to run, he projected messages telling me I was in danger. When he wanted me to hate Yvette, he projected warnings about her abusing me. He had used my own eyes to make me destroy my own life. Also, he could take my place in the wedding car. You, I whispered, my fingers clenching the sofa fabric until the seams tore. Every single warning, every time I ran, you were the one who wrote them. It was so easy, Jonathan. Frederick suddenly laughed, a dry, hysterical sound that made his chest heave. You were so stupid. You actually believed you were a protagonist in some fantasy. You believed a couple of floating words over your own family. All I had to do was type run on my phone, and you'd throw yourself into Yvette's enemy's arms like a loyal pup. He looked at Yvette, his eyes wild with a desperate, crazy rage. And you think you've won? The lens is permanent, Yvette. It's wired to his Optic nerve. If I press the final command on my phone, the chip will short circuit. He'll be blind for the rest of his life. He reached into his pocket, his hand clutching his cellular phone. Bang! A clean, precise shot from Yvette's automatic shattered the phone in his hand, sending fragments of glass and metal flying into his cheek. Frederick let out a wet, rattling scream, his fingers bleeding as he clutched his ruined wrist. The transmitter is already blocked, Frederick, Yvette said, her voice flat and final. We jammed the frequency the moment we entered the building. Marcus, get the medical team. Have the chip removed. And then take Frederick to the Northern Harbor. Yes, Mrs. Sinclair, Marcus said, his men stepping forward to drag Frederick out of the room, his blood staining the white marble as he screamed. The private medical room of the Sinclair estate was silent, smelling of sterile bleach, lavender, and warm paper. I sat in the comfortable leather chair, my back wrapped in clean white bandages, my left eye covered by a small protective patch. The surgery to remove the micro-AR lens had been quick, performed by Yvette's private medical team under a general anesthetic that had left me with no memories of the transition. The system was gone. The floating blue letters that had ruled 2 of my lives had vanished, leaving my vision clear, quiet, and completely my own. The door to the room opened quietly. Yvette walked in, wearing a simple dark green wool coat, her hair loose around her shoulders. She carried a cup of hot herbal tea, setting it gently on the table near my hand. The Smith Group assets have been liquidated, Jonathan, Yvette said, her voice soft against the quiet room. Your mother has signed over her remaining shares to your name. She's left the city. She's taken a small room in the Southern District. She doesn't want to see anyone. And Elaine? I asked, my voice dry. She's at the Northern Docks, Yvette said, her green eyes looking down at me with a quiet, steady respect. She was trying to flee to the capital with the 10 million she received from the Russos. We retrieved the funds. The Russo family has been notified of her breach of contract. They are very particular about their investments, Jonathan. She won't be coming back. I took a slow sip of the tea, the warmth spreading through my chest. I spent 2 lives trying to run from you, Yvette, I said, a faint, tired smile touching my lips, because I believed the words. I believed you were a monster who would auction me off to your friends. I am a monster, Jonathan, Yvette said, her hand reaching out to touch my chin, her fingers warm and secure. But I'm a monster who keeps her promises. He chose you because you were the only man in this city who didn't look at my father's empire with greed in his eyes. I chose you because you were real. She leaned down, her lips brushing against my forehead, her breath warm against my skin. The wedding has been rescheduled for Sunday, she murmured. No stepfathers. No sisters. Just us. I'll be ready, Yvette, I said, my fingers wrapping around hers, my grip firm and strong. The Grand Cathedral of Riverton stood like a towering stone monument against the gray winter sky. The security was absolute, the entire perimeter blocked by black, armor-plated Mercedes-Maybach sedans, the private guards of the Sinclair family standing like dark, silent trees along the stone paths. Inside, the hall was warm, filled with the quiet, expensive scent of fresh roses and white wax. I stood at the altar, wearing a tailored black wool suit, my eye patch gone, my vision clear as I watched the grand double doors of the cathedral swing open. Yvette walked down the aisle. She wore a magnificent, backless crimson silk gown, her long dark hair pinned up with a simple gold rose pin, her face calm, beautiful, and completely radiant. Under the warm lights of the chandeliers, she didn't look like a crime boss. She looked like a queen walking toward her throne. She reached the altar, her hand sliding into mine, her grip warm, secure, and entirely real. Do you, Yvette Sinclair, take this man to be your husband? The officiant's voice echoed through the high stone arches. I absolutely do, Yvette said, her green eyes looking directly into mine with a quiet, boundless warmth. And do you, Jonathan Smith, take this woman to be your wife? I looked at her face, at the woman who had saved me from the dark, who had pulled the needle from my eye, and who had given me a real home. I do, I said, my voice steady, clear, and carrying a quiet resonance that filled the silent cathedral. As we turned and walked down the aisle together, the crowd of guests erupted into loud, respectful applause. But I didn't look at them. I looked at the dark green pines outside the glass doors, the first snow of the year beginning to fall in soft, silent flakes over the stone paths. The system was dead. The traps were gone. The shadows of the past completely cleared, and the sky ahead of us was entirely blue. I took my wife's hand, and together, we walked out into the light, looking toward a future that was finally, truly, our own.